I'm going to compare two different players to you right now. Player A has a career ERA of 2.86, adjusted ERA of 140, over 1,700 career innings pitched, a whip of 1.141, a strikeouts per 9 rate of 7.6, 39.1 WAR, and a WAR of 162 games played rate of 2.5. Player B has a career 2.67 ERA, 157 adjusted ERA, nearly 800 career innings, a whip of 1.092, a strikeouts per 9 rate of 9.8, nearly 23 career WAR, and a WAR per 162 game rate of 2.4. Who would you say is the better pitcher? Take a moment to think about it. Player A is the sum of all 8 relief pitchers in the Hall of Fame. Player B is Tom Henke. Among all relief pitchers in baseball history with a minimum of 750 innings pitched, Henke ranks 3rd in adjusted ERA, only behind Mariano Rivera and Billy Wagner. Tom Henke may be the greatest relief pitcher of all time that you have never heard of. Henke played in the major leagues from 1982 to 1995. Across his 14-year career, he played mostly with the Toronto Blue Jays, but also spent time with the Texas Rangers and St. Louis Cardinals. Henke's career stats include nearly 800 innings pitched, nearly 650 games played, and has over 300 saves. As shown earlier, he has a career 2.67 ERA, 157 adjusted ERA, 1.092 whip, and struck out 9.8 batters per 9 innings with a career 3.3 strikeouts to walk ratio. He's a 2-time All-Star, received MVP votes in 3 seasons, and is a World Series winner, appearing in the World Series for the Blue Jays in 1992. Perhaps the best season of his career came in 1987. That year, he recorded a 2.49 ERA, 182 adjusted ERA, struck out 12.3 batters per 9 innings, and recorded 3.3 wins above replacement. He led the league in games finished and saves, and placed 13th in MVP voting. Henke was a great relief pitcher and doesn't get the recognition he deserves. To show just how good Tom Henke really was, let's compare him to other relief pitchers all time. As mentioned earlier, Henke's adjusted ERA ranks 3rd all-time in baseball history among relievers with a minimum 750 career innings pitched. The only 2 pitchers in front of him include the greatest relief pitcher of all time and a potential future Hall of Famer. Even if I lower the threshold to 500 career innings and include both starting pitchers and relief pitchers, Henke only drops down to 12th all-time on the leaderboard for adjusted ERA. That's no typo. 12th on the leaderboard among all pitchers all time with a minimum 500 innings pitched. Among all relief pitchers of all time, Henke ranks in the top 20 in ERA, adjusted ERA, whip, WAR, and strikeouts to walk ratio. He's also 26th on the all-time leaderboard for saves in a career, and at the time of his retirement, he ranked 5th all-time in career saves. I think it's safe to say Henke was one of the greatest relief pitchers of all time. I didn't even mention my favorite parts about Henke. First, his nickname was the Terminator. Second, he wore big glasses. I miss when ball players wore those big frame glasses. Lastly, Henke recorded the save in the last ever forfeit in Major League Baseball when the Dodgers forfeited a game against the Cardinals in 1995. If Henke's one of the greatest relief pitchers of all time, why is he virtually unknown? There are a few reasons for this, and one of them can be attributed to the teams he was on. Henke was drafted by the Texas Rangers and spent the first few seasons of his career with them. Texas wasn't particularly good during his time with them and were a small market team. Toronto was a much better team, but playing in Canada may have hindered his popularity, even if only a little bit. He also spent only 1 season on the Cardinals, and that was one of the very few seasons that St. Louis finished under 500, so they weren't as popular as other teams in the National League that year. While it may be a small reason, small market or unpopular teams are a reason why Henke was unknown. A much larger reason why Henke may have flown under the radar is the competition he faced. There was a relief pitcher boom in the 1980s, as I like to call it. Saves became an official MLB statistic in 1969, and reliever popularity really took off about a decade later. The 1980s were the first time MLB saw more saves being recorded than complete games. In fact, there are 9 times in MLB history where a relief pitcher won the Cy Young. 6 of them occurred between 1979 to 1992. During that same time frame, 3 relief pitchers also won the MVP award. There was only one other instance of a reliever winning the MVP award outside of that 14-year stretch. Out of the 8 relief pitchers in the Hall of Fame, 5 of them pitched the majority of their careers in the late 70s or 80s. To make a long story short, relievers were popular in the 1980s, gaining attention from the baseball world. As mentioned earlier, Henke played from 1982 to 1995, right in the heart of this time. While he may have been great, there were many other big names to compete for in the spotlight, and they all had better seasons, attaining more notable awards and accolades. That brings me to my next point, Henke's lack of a stellar season. A lot of the terrific relief pitchers of the 1980s had memorable, epic seasons. There were multiple Cy Young and MVP award winners who posted some of the greatest seasons by a relief pitcher ever. These same pitchers were also constantly receiving Cy Young votes year in and year out. Henke never had that one amazing season. He was a fantastic pitcher every season, but was only that. He never had an unbelievable prime or epic season. Every year, he was simply great. Never was he the best relief pitcher in any season during his career. That doesn't degrade his performance at all, as it is very hard to be that good for that long. His prime lasted several years, but his peak never reached grand proportions like other relievers. He was consistent, but never the best. Lastly, a fourth reason why Henke is underrated and flew under the radar is his innings pitched. He has under 800 innings pitched in his career, much fewer than other relievers. Every relief pitcher in the Hall of Fame has over 1,000 innings pitched. Other notable great relief pitchers such as Billy Wagner, Francisco Rodriguez, Dan Quisenberry, Joe Nathan, John Franco, and others all have more innings pitched than Henke. Had he pitched more innings in his career, he may be more well known as one of the greatest relievers of all time. Similar story to his WAR as well. It could have been much higher had he had more playing time. Henke may be statistically one of the greatest relievers in baseball history, but his counting stats suffer a bit. I'd like to wrap up this video with a question I ask with all my videos regarding underrated players. Is Tom Henke a Hall of Famer? That is tougher than it appears. On one hand, statistics show he was one of the best relief pitchers ever, posting similar or even better stats than multiple Hall of Famers. Henke has a better adjusted ERA than Bruce Sutter, Raleigh Fingers, and Trevor Hoffman. He has a higher WAR per 162 games played than Fingers and Lee Smith, and has more career saves than Sutter and Goose Gossage. The one thing holding him back is the counting stats, specifically innings pitched and subsequently WAR. Henke pitched over 200 fewer innings than the lowest amount by a Hall of Famer, and has less WAR. Not to mention, Henke never received Cy Young Award votes in his career, while all those in the Hall either won awards or received votes in many years. Personally, I'll pencil in Henke as a fringe Hall of Fame player who should not be elected in. A Hall of very good, if you'd say. The lack of Cy Young Award votes and the lack of playing time hurts him. Had he played a few more seasons and received Cy Young votes in at least a couple of seasons, this could be a very different argument. Alas, Tom Henke is not Hall of Fame caliber, but he's still one of the greatest and most underrated relief pitchers of all time.